Hello all, welcome to the 17th edition of Dialogue with Expert. I extend a warm welcome on behalf of Prime Point Foundation, eMagazine Presence and DIGI, Digital Journalists Association of India, to one and all watching us on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and all other social media platforms. Today's edition of the show, we are excited to be conversing with Mr. Rahul Shyam Bhandari, advocate on record at Supreme Court of India, New Delhi. He also served as amicus curiae in Supreme Court for a period of 2 years. A former junior of a noted senior lawyer, late Dr. M.N. Krishnamani, he has been practicing for more than 10 years now and has represented various government bodies and non-government bodies. A panel lawyer for BHEL, his core area of practice lies in arbitration, constitution, extradition laws, service laws, white-collar crimes, etc. A pass out of Symbiosis Law College, Pune, he is well known for his exceptional way of handling cases and closing them successfully. It is indeed an honor to be conversing with Rahul Shyam Bhandari today. I now request Mr. Prime Point Srinivasan, Managing Editor of the Presence magazine, to take over the conversation.
Thank you. Thank you for having me over here.
Thank you, Nandini.
Thanks, Rahul.
I welcome Mr. Rahul Shyam Bhandari for the show. Mr. Rahul Bhandari is an excellent and well-known advocate on record at Supreme Court. And in this conversation, we would like to discuss about the freedom of expression and the freedom of speech. Nowadays, it is more freedom of expression and freedom of speech is more assumed in the technological world. Now let us hear from him. What are the legal implications? What are the legal standing? And what are the things that are being spelled out in the Constitution? Good evening, Rahul.
Good evening, sir. Thank you. Thank you for having me over here.
And what exactly the fundamental rights given in the Constitution? Before we going in for the freedom of expression and speech, let us go into the fundamental rights. What are the, can you quickly explain what are the fundamental rights?
So I'll briefly explain about the fundamental rights. Obviously, freedom of speech and expression is one of the fundamental rights guaranteed in the Constitution of India. So the fundamental rights are covered in Part 3 of the Constitution of India. So Part 3 consists of Articles 12 to 35. So it consists of various important fundamental rights guaranteed to citizens of India, which includes right to equality, right to life, right to liberty, and various sections. So these are the fundamental rights. Fundamental rights are defined as fundamental because it is very important. And these rights are the natural rights given to the citizens of this country. The basic concept behind this fundamental right is that the state, a country, enforces these fundamental rights against itself. These rights cannot be denied, cannot be taken away, cannot be altered or amended as statutory rights can be done. The important thing to note here is Article 13, the one of the starting point of fundamental rights. Article 13 clearly says that no law shall be made in derogation or in inconsistency to fundamental rights, meaning thereby that a parliament cannot make any law so as to defeat the fundamental rights. So the importance of fundamental rights has been recognized in our constitution since time immemorial. Now,
Can you give a brief explanation about freedom of expression and freedom of speech?
This right is obviously goes without saying that one of the most important right, and freedom of speech and expression is considered actually as mother of all liberties. If you see the preamble of our constitution, it has been time and again discussed and said by the Supreme Court also that the preamble of our constitution, which speaks of the basic principles, liberty, fraternity, dignity, are useless if you without this important right of freedom of speech and expression. And that is the reason this right assumes a lot of importance in today's world also. So freedom of speech and expression, there is a logic that this freedom of speech and expression is guaranteed to every citizen of India. So there are 3 or 4 broad logic behind freedom of speech and expression. That this right why this right shall not be curtailed and why this right is important for all of us. Number one, that obviously it is important for the purpose of self-governance, self-attainment. We can take an example of today's scenario, like if for maintaining a political stability also, this right is very important because you need to participate in that process. You need to voice your opinion. Also, take an example to check the abuse of the powers by the public officials. Their freedom of speech and expression assumes importance, and there an ordinary citizen like you and me can come and participate. Therefore, number one, it promotes self-attainment, self-growth, and self-governance. Number two, a discovery of truth. Obviously, freedom of speech and expression, where there'll be a dissenting opinion also, there to accept good, reject evil. So therefore, it helps in discovery of truth. Then number three, we can say the maintaining societal interest. We also have to hear the dissenting opinion. In this context, I must point out one of the famous judges of US Supreme Court, Justice Holmes. He has remarked why this right is very important and why you have to also give respect to dissenting opinion. That he says freedom of speech and expression. This freedom doesn't mean freedom for the thought who would agree with us, but also freedom for thought which we will hate, or we will with the thought which we hate. So therefore, to define it simply, that the right of dissenting is also an important right, and most of the time we see that dissenters benefit others, while a conformist will benefit himself herself only. So therefore, this freedom of speech and expression is the right, if you and that's the reason, though in our country this is not considered as an absolute right. This comes with a lot of limits.
How is it comparable with international laws?
Yeah, so therefore, insofar as, let's take an example of US. So because our freedom of speech and expression, the core principles, values, concept has been borrowed, and we have borrowed the language from US Constitution also. So US Constitution says, the Bill of Rights, the first amendment to the US Constitution say that this right is absolute in terms. It says Congress shall not make any law which will abridge the freedom of speech and expression. So, insofar as the US is concerned, this right has been worded as an absolute right. Though in execution, though in example, this may not be an absolute right. And from time to time, judiciary of Supreme Court has also, US Supreme Court has also interpreted and brought some restriction. So, insofar as US is concerned, this is considered as an absolute right on paper. However, if you talk about India, this is not an absolute right. The key differences, if I may have to point out, between the US Constitution and Indian Constitution on freedom of speech and expression, the number one is US Constitution says it is an absolute right. India says no, it is not an absolute right. It is subject to some restriction, which are 8 reasonable restrictions. Another very interesting distinction between US and Indian part is, in US, this right also carves out a special category for freedom of press. It says that it also extends to it recognizes press as a separate category, and then there is a freedom of press also under this the same right. Insofar as India is concerned, in our constitution, there is no separate category. So therefore, we say this right is applicable to all the citizens of the country, and therefore media is also a citizen, and therefore there is no separate category. So that's how they have done. And insofar as India is concerned, the Constitution of India, it describes 8 restrictions. There was a weekly magazine which was circulated from somewhere from Maharashtra, which was banned an entry in Chennai, in Tamil Nadu, because it was critical of PM's idea at that time, Nehru's idea. So therefore, this reached up to Supreme Court, and Supreme Court said, look, there cannot be pre-censorship on a publication. Obviously, movies are a separate category. We will discuss that part later on. So Romesh Thapar, again, is a very important judgment of freedom of speech and expression. Coming to freedom of the press, freedom of the media, another important case on this is Indian Express newspaper case. This case assumes a lot of importance from the point of right of the press, right of the media. So in this case, the Supreme Court has said even an indirect attempt to control the freedom of speech and expression will not be permitted. This is for a reason that in this case, briefly explaining, that time in the government, state government, had imposed a high import duty tax on the newspaper. So therefore, it was eventually affecting the circulation of that newspaper. And therefore, they contended that my circulation is affected because of such high taxes. So my freedom of speech and expression is also curtailed. So Supreme Court came to the rescue and said, look, no, even an indirect impact or effect will not be permitted. This freedom of speech and expression, as we have discussed, that this is one of the most fundamental right guaranteed to every one of us. And so, this has been a matter of discussion, interpretation from time to time in Supreme Court of India, starting from the case of Ramesh Thapar. So Ramesh Thapar was the case which was decided in early 1950s, where this term came to be interpreted, where a pre-censorship on publication was questioned. So these two cases, and then you come to so many cases thereafter. In 2015, Shreya Shingal is another case where 66A was struck down. So this is a positive part of freedom of speech and expression. What is interesting to note down here, that this same right which says you have freedom of speech and expression, you can go and speak, you can convey your ideas by any mode of communication, it also has a negative right. The negative right, I mean to say, right to silence. So therefore, my freedom of speech and expression doesn't mean I can bother somebody at night with loudspeakers, with sound amplifiers. So therefore, right to silence has also been recognized as freedom of speech and expression. So they, in some of the cases, they have held in a land noise pollution case, they have said no. Right to silence is also freedom of speech and expression. So you cannot use loudspeaker amplifier at uninterrupted time, and it has to be used within a regulated time. So therefore, right to silence, right to privacy, this all are another aspect of freedom of speech and expression. So this is how overall the freedom of speech and expression has been defined and interpreted from time to time by Supreme Court of India.
Oh. Now we'll go for that restrictions. Which are the restrictions that you have been referring to?
Yeah. So as we discussed that there are 8 restrictions on freedom of speech and expression. I must emphasize on the word reasonable. So therefore, before restriction, our constitution used the word reasonable, meaning thereby these all restrictions are to be reasonable and has to be tested. This restriction cannot be applied normally, and every restriction is subject to judicial review also in most of the cases. To start with sovereignty and integrity of India. So therefore, this restriction has been carved out to protect so many aspects. So to give an example, we can have an example of, say, national flag. So a person is bound to respect its national flag. So therefore, you cannot go and burn the national flag. So it amounts to restricting your freedom of speech and expression under this right. Similarly, you can't go and burn the Constitution of India, though we have been seeing some examples, but those examples are very extreme examples. So therefore, insofar as sovereignty and integrity of India is concerned, there are laws also which protects this restriction. Like as I explained, that a national flag cannot be burned, cannot be insulted. If you do so, and under the garb of freedom of speech and expression, your right will not be protected and will be straightaway restricted. And then there is a particular law also governing on this, which is National Insults Act, something like that. So insofar as sovereignty and integrity of India is concerned, though we have a freedom of speech and expression, that doesn't mean that you insult your country, you go and do some activities which are considered anti-national activities. There, this restriction will be imposed. The second is security of state. This is again a very important restriction. Normally, these restrictions are to be as exceptionally applied, but security of state is another restriction which has been time and again applied by the central government in recent times also. So security of state means you have to protect the security of the country. Someone cannot involve themselves in anti-national activities. Some say, suppose if our country is on a war with another country, you cannot promote the ideas of that enemy country. You cannot give an aid to that enemy country. So these are the basic examples where the government will be justified to restrict your freedom of speech and expression. Another example we can say is National Security Act. We are aware this Article 370 was of Constitution Media dealing with Jammu and Kashmir case was abolished. There, we have seen the local leaders of Kashmir, they have been detained in order to prevent the security of the state. So this has been done under this restriction only, because there is a law, National Security Act. National Security Act says if you participate in some activities, you promote against your activities promote goes against the security of state, your freedom will be restricted for the time being. So this is, insofar as this security of state is restriction is concerned, this has been very recently been invoked from time to time by the government. Coming to the number three, friendly relation with foreign states. So this is again based on international principle that you should respect. If your country is having a cordial term with another country, suppose some ambassador of that country is here in your country, and therefore you cannot do any activity which you can do, but there are some restrictions that you cannot do intentionally to insult that country or spoil the friendly relation of your country. So it is based primarily on international principles of mutual respect. That is how we can define. Insofar, number four is public order. This is a very, very important restriction. This is a very, public order has a wide scope. There are a number of things, if the government wants, then they can curtail you right under the garb of public order, this restriction. Public order definitely means that nothing shall be without order. A thing has to be uh, societal interest has to be in order. You have to maintain the order of the entire country. So public order involves number of implication, number of ramifications. There are a number of examples we can start with insofar as public order is concerned. Suppose if an agitation is going on, if a protest is going on, that is all right. That is your freedom of speech and expression. But the moment that agitation turns violent, that becomes aggressive, or so as to such, it takes a shape so as to violently overthrow the government of any country, government of India. So therefore, that time this public order will come into the picture. Similarly, take an example of hate speech. Public order also says that somebody should not be permitted to go and incite communal feelings. Somebody cannot speak something which can hurt the religious sentiments or feelings of one community. So we have been seeing this hate speech these days. This is another matter of contemplation for all of us. So therefore, public order says that you have to maintain the order. There are certain things which you cannot do. And these are the examples which I have cited, that hate speech also comes into, it can come into that point. In fact, this public order also postulates a forcible conversion also. Now, this also has been a matter of discussion, the religious conversion and all this. So this says, public order also says that there cannot be a forcible conversion of religion. So these are some of the examples where this restriction can be imposed, can be brought to curtail your freedom of speech and expression. So again, decency and morality. This is restriction number 5. Decency and morality is again a very wide connotation. It includes number of things. Decency means you have to maintain the decency of the society, decency of the state. You cannot go at public places and do some immoral activities or some indecent activities, which is on a general principle not acceptable to the common public. And same goes with morality. So in order to give some examples, say, and for the sake of freedom of speech and expression, you cannot do certain activities which are not permissible at public places, or which is considered as immoral, which is not permitted to do. You cannot promote. To better give an example, consider like it's not irrational to talk about sex, but then you cannot objectify it. A publication cannot come with a publication cannot come with some pictures which shows that thing in a very insulting manner. However, there are exceptions also. Take an example of medical or for medical science. This using of sexual pictures are permitted because it is bringing some purpose, but otherwise it is not bringing purpose. Same, one of the good examples here is, in fact, in LGBT case, 377 case, when this case was tested upon in Supreme Court, the rights of LGBT, 377 famous. There, this ground was proposed by the government. They said, no, this is a reasonable restriction. Therefore, 377 is a valid law and it shall not be abolished. Supreme Court refused to take this as a valid ground. They said, no, decency and morality cannot come in the way of granting rights to LGBT. So this is, I think, one of the valid example to define that this is how decency and morality has been invoked from time to time. And then there are so many provisions in the Indian Penal Code also, which governs this, which takes care of this object, that wherever you should, a person shall not cross his limits, while expressing his idea, while expressing his, speech. So this is how decency and morality has been discussed. Contempt of court is another very important restriction. This has been a matter of, discussion, contemplation in recent times. We say that judiciary and this freedom of speech and expression is being at loggerheads over this. So contempt of court essentially means that you will have a freedom of speech and expression, but that doesn't mean that you can destroy the public confidence in the mechanism of judiciary. So therefore, my freedom of speech and expression doesn't mean that I go and say anything as against anybody in the, say, judiciary. So therefore, judiciary has been invoking this power, contempt of court, time and again. Now, this is why this is very important. I must emphasize more about this restriction, contempt of court, because
so Rahul, here I want to, 1 minute. Here I want to intervene. Sometimes the judicial judgments, can it be reviewed by us, even in magazines and newspapers, but without attributing motive to the judges? Suppose if a judgment, say for an example, any decision, 66A revocation, LGBT law and other thing, the courts can also hear, or can it be pointed out in the media that can we review the judicial judgments?
No, so therefore, this restriction doesn't mean that you cannot criticize a judge. A fair criticism is always possible.
Criticize the judgment? Criticize the judgment or judge?
Fair criticism of judgment, I'm talking. Criticizing a judge is a personal attack. Criticizing a judge is a personal attack. So a fair criticism of judgment, fair criticism of even a judge, in some cases is permissible. That's not. So there is a difference between a fair criticism and scandalization. So therefore, take an example that if you are not happy with the judgment, we even as lawyers, we do use such terms when we appeal in Supreme Court, that the judge in the lower court, a judge in the high court has not duly applied his mind. But suppose if I attribute motives, if I say the judge was biased and judge was foolish, judge has no idea, therefore it may amount to contempt. So fair criticism is always permissible. The difference is that you cannot scandalize, you cannot make unfounded allegations against the judiciary. Now, to give an example, a very important case, Arundhati Roy's case was decided in Supreme Court long back, where they have discussed this restriction also. There, an allegation was made that the judgment has been given to silence the dissenters or silence a particular community. So therefore, that Supreme Court said, no, it amounts to contempt of the court. You are attributing motives, you are making unfounded allegations. And therefore, in such cases, your freedom of speech and expression will be restricted. We have been seeing the recent example.
You mean to say that we can review the judgment, but not allege anything against the judge? That is the freedom.
No, that is so you cannot allege against the judge. You cannot say that, look, the judge is biased, or this judge, even if so, that is the difficulty. The major difference between contempt of court and defamation is, which will come later on. In defamation, truth is in defense. Somebody says something against somebody and he files a defamation case. Your truth is your defense. but unlike in contempt of court. Therefore, there has been a discussion also that this amounts to controlling the freedom of speech and expression. So, insofar as contempt of court is concerned, they divided into two parts. They say, number one, scandalizing the court institution amounts to contempt of court, or doing something which prevents the operation of justice. You obstructs the justice. Say, if there is a pending case, and even if if you're threatening a party, or you're making an allegation that this matter notice has been issued, or this matter some judgment order has been passed to give benefit to a certain party, so you are obviously making you're making an allegation against somebody and without any basis, then therefore it invites an action from the court. So your freedom doesn't mean, because we have to be reminded of one fact: insofar as freedom of speech and expression is concerned, definitely it's an important right and it cannot be denied. At the same time, free and fearless justice is another important part of a democratic setup. Judiciary is another important part of democratic setup. Therefore you have to allow that court to function freely and fearlessly. So these are the few examples, and we have seen recently.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
Just to give one example, sir, we have seen that recently a lot of contempt actions have been proposed in Honorable Supreme Court of India.
Yes.
Also, recently a comedian has also. I personally have seen a lot of. I am completely into idea of freedom of speech and expression. But at the same time, it doesn't mean that you go ahead and you make any kind of allegation against anybody. I have seen a lot of statements on social media platforms where anybody walk in and say that, look, judiciary is sold off. It has this judgment has been passed to give benefit to this particular person. So therefore, if you do not control that, where do you draw a line? That is the difficulty. We have been doing cases now and day, every day. Suppose if you do not restrict a particular person on that point, every litigant will be permitted after rejection of his or her case to make an allegation against a particular judge of the particular court. So that is the reason this contempt of court is carved out as an exception to freedom of speech and expression. And again, there are two categories. There is one civil contempt and a criminal contempt. A civil contempt is simple, willful disobedience to any order or undertaking you have given to a court. A criminal contempt, which we are concerned with, means scandalizing, obstructing the course of the justice. And then we have a specified law punishing this, which is 499 of Indian Penal Code, which will deal defamation. That is because contempt of court and defamation both are somehow related also. So that's at one point of time you have to prevent that you have to ensure that there shall not be abridgment on freedom of speech and expression. At the same time, you have to draw a line. That is the reason this contempt of court is there.
Very good. Well explained. We can move to next defamation.
Defamation again is like, my right of freedom of speech and expression doesn't mean that I can harm your reputation. My right of freedom of expression doesn't give me a license to go and may say anything against anybody, without any basis again. So therefore, right to reputation is also your right and my right. And now in recent times, we have seen this case, Puttaswamy case, another landmark case, which is also included now right to privacy as a fundamental right. So therefore, all these rights are very much related. So defamation will be invoked if somebody tomorrow goes and make an allegation against me, something which is completely baseless, and my defense in response to this will be my truth. So truth is considered as a defense to a defamatory proceedings. So again, there is a particular law in the Indian Penal Code 499 of IPC dealing with defamation proceedings. So at one point of time, you have to protect the freedom of speech and expression, but that doesn't give you license to harm the reputation of anybody.
I would like to seek a clarification. Sometime I have seen some of the journals, suppose on a political leader, on some popular person, they write some nonsense and scandal, very 3 pages they write. And then finally, they end with them. When we contacted the concerned person, he refused all the allegation. They close it with one line. Then, by the time the damages happens for the 3 pages, But you are adding one line for a safety that he denied all the allegations.
Correct. So therefore, I'm again saying, sir, I'm again emphasizing on the fact that why this the deficit. Suppose if I know something has actually happened, if I know something about somebody, and therefore I am permitted to say, so therefore you can't curb the voice of the dissenters. But something, if I know that this is not correct, and you make an allegation against me, but my response is my truth. And if I say this is not true, you come and prove this fact, and if you fail to prove this fact, you'll be liable for defamation. You'll be liable for this criminal proceedings as well. And in recent times, we have seen that Attorney General of India has been in fact for contempt of court also. He has given consent, for a lot of applications to proceed ahead, and given consent that you can go and file a contempt of proceeding. You can file a contempt case before Supreme Court of India. Because one thing I must point out, because I think that is also important. Suppose if there is, I'm again saying contempt of court and defamation both are very, very much related. So because if you make an allegation against a particular judge, unlike in contempt of court where a truth is not a defense, and defamation, truth is a defense. But a contempt of court also gives you a protection. If somebody wants to file a contempt of court proceedings in Supreme Court, you have to take the permission of Attorney General. So therefore, until the Attorney General of India doesn't give you permission, you cannot go and file a criminal contempt of court. So these are some of the protection which have been given, so that nobody is freely permitted to go and approach the court and file a contempt of court. Coming to defamation, as I pointed out, the defamation doesn't mean defamation, freedom of speech and expression doesn't mean that you can baselessly injure somebody's reputation. And that is the reason this defamation is, and it is very essential to promote harmony in society. Otherwise it will lead to complete disorder. If I am permitted to say anything about anybody without any basis, then this will not be justified.
We can move to the next.
Yeah. So last is incitement to offense. Incitement to offense is basically simply mean that you shall not and you cannot promote somebody to commit an offense. There are provisions in the Indian Penal Code which says that, look, this is punishable. So I cannot incite somebody, look, you do something on the pretext of freedom of speech and expression. I cannot come and promote something which is not permitted. And I cannot promote, look, you shall do something, we shall do writing, or we shall do something which disrupt the entire order of the society. There, this exception will be imposed, incitement to an offense.
Then, but what is the difference between the public order and earlier you said no, that incitement to offense and the public order? That's also in a public order also somebody talking ill of some religion, talking ill of some leaders. These are all that's also the inciting to an offense. In the emotional cadre, emotional people, they immediately go into violence, no?
Correct. So more or less, you can say public order is, again, as I was discussing, it has a wide scope. Obviously, it is subject to judicial review. If a government is imposing this restriction, it will be tested before the court. But public order entails number of things. Incitement to offense is it doesn't give you that wide scope. So it is somebody going and inciting somebody to commit say an offense which is punishable as per the criminal law, which is not permitted to do. I cannot go and incite you to my freedom of speech and expression doesn't mean that go and commit a murder, commit a robbery. So there this incitement to an offense will come into picture. But insofar as public order is concerned, this can include multiple things. As I told you, hate speech and promotion of idea which can affect the harmony, bringing disorder in the society, forcible conversion, the number of things which can come under the public order.
Now that you said that it is not an absolute freedom and it with the restriction. Yes. Now in the emergence of social media, and the people assume that they have an absolute freedom and they start writing whatever they have, because the social media doesn't have any sort of editorial board like traditional media, where what risk they carry, the social media people?
So therefore, this is a predicament which we have been facing since long for the last few years. So freedom of speech and expression obviously means that you can express your voice, you can express by any mode of communication, be even social media. And social media has become a very important tool. It has both positive and negative impact. Take an example of positive. Let's take a positive example. Obviously, somebody who cannot voice their opinion on a stage or in an open environment can go and log in from Facebook or Twitter and can voice their opinion. And you take another positive example during this lockdown. The entire country was in lockdown. Normally, we'll have a freedom of speech and expression about some subject, about some thing which we agree or disagree. So people were freely using all these social platforms, including Twitter, where they were time to time expressing their opinion against what is right about the lockdown, what is wrong about the lockdown, or whatever aspects. So this is the positive aspect of social media. But of late we are seeing that social media is creating a lot of disharmony in the society also. The major disadvantage is its polarization. Take an example. Today everything is left and right, black and white. People have started coining the terms bhakt or naxals. So therefore there is no neutral today. So social media has Twitter has become a place of activism. Anybody can come and anybody can say anything against anyone. So, and unfortunate part is there is no regulation, and that is the reason Supreme Court is also contemplating that we shall have something to regulate the social media platforms. Because insofar as the press is concerned, insofar as the electronic media is concerned, we have regulation. Press Council of India is there. They have their own voluntary organization to regulate all this forum. Unfortunately, for the social media platform, there is nothing. So therefore, the accountability is the one important thing which we have to fix insofar as social media platform is concerned. Because of, again, this though there is an advocacy there, people have advocated that there shall not be any curtailment of freedom of speech and expression via social media. Also, that's true. Personally, I'll be the last person to say so. But then again, we have to draw some demarcation somewhere, because when these platforms came, they were considered as neutral organization. These were only this platforms like Facebook or Twitter were only considered as the carriers of information. Today, they are no more neutral organization. Data mining is an issue. They're studying your profile, and according to your profile, things are being reflected. And we have another very good example of Cambridge Analytica, US election issue, where they have this data mining and all this thing happened. So, this is the
Privacy
pessimistic
issues
side of.
privacy issues, and you are giving consent, because without knowingly or unknowingly, when you are signing up with all the social media platforms or with the apps, I agree for all the
Correct.
terms and conditions. We give away all our rights for them to take all our by the way, in this
And
you were talking about the censor, that OTT platform doesn't have any censor now. And
yes,
the
correct,
traditional films which we were watching in the theaters have a censor. Whether the censor
correct,
violates the fundamental right of freedom of expression, because I make a movie, somebody government makes a censor of my film, only when it
correct,
violates all these 8 norms, whichever the restrictions. And
correct.
in the OTT platform, that also is not there. You can take a film like a YouTube or anything. In the YouTube doesn't have any restrictions. So you are publishing it. Where it leads to? What is the legal aspect of it?
Therefore, this is a very nice point, sir, you have proposed. Now, therefore, this restriction, decency and morality comes into the picture here also. So, since this social media platforms or take this OTT platforms, they do not have any accountability issue. So, they are publishing anything. And see, as we discussed decency and morality and public order also. Why this cinematograph act is important? Because then it gives a right to an authority to pre-censorship a movie. See, because we have this idea of pre-censorship insofar as movies are concerned, because movies have, is capable of creating a big ramification. It can provoke number of ideas. Therefore, I must tell this K. Abbas versus Union of India, a very landmark case concerning this, where the Supreme Court say no, insofar as movies are concerned, this pre-censorship issue, which was told as this amounts to restriction, unreasonable restriction on my freedom of speech and expression. But Supreme Court said no. This is essential to regulate. This is essential to control the decency, morality, and public order. However, I must tell you, this now issues again pending in Supreme Court. This question has been again raised. Shall be done away because then there are allegations that on the pretext of pre-censorship, a number of movies are not being allowed to propagate their ideas. So coming to the point of this social media platform, they do not have all this accountability of pre-censorship. They are going ahead with any kind of telecast, broadcasting, and which is not regulated at all. We are seeing this Netflix and Amazon Prime. So unlike Netflix, Amazon Prime, they are broadcasting the content without any regulation as such, but normally which will not be permitted insofar as movies are concerned. So there where we see that the accountability issue is missing. And one more important, I'm sorry, sir, please tell.
And now we are coming to the end of that show. Now I request Nandini to come on screen, and she has some one or two questions that she has received through WhatsApp for this show.
Yes. Rahul, I have received two questions from our viewers. The first question is there any fundamental difference between freedom of expression and freedom of speech?
See, I don't see a fundamental difference as such. See, as we were discussing the scenario of US Constitution also. So the US Constitution does not use the term expression. It's only freedom of speech. But India, we use the term freedom of speech as well as expression. Yeah. But that does, now the expression means, expressing your view by any mode of communication. Take an example of visual publication. Take an example of media. Take an example of movies. Or these are the more modes of expression of your freedom of speech. But at the same time, merely because this term expression has not been used, as I pointed out, the US does not use freedom of speech and expression, only freedom of speech. That doesn't mean there can be unnecessary curtailment on freedom of speech, insofar as movies are concerned or insofar as other media platforms are concerned. So I don't see a vital difference between freedom of speech and expression and only freedom of speech. But expression includes number of modes of communication which are permitted to enjoy this freedom, this valuable freedom.
All right, thank you. The next question is, are there any specific clauses or provisions for freedom of expression or speech for children, considering they are unable to express themselves as much as adults can?
I don't foresee a special clause for children because see, even for press, there is no separate category as in US, they have a separate category for press. So this freedom of speech and expression is guaranteed to every citizen of this country. So therefore, there is no difference between a child and an adult. A child is also a citizen of the country. So therefore, if as an adult, I have a right to speak about some subject, I want to propagate some idea, that same right goes to a child also. Only thing that is time to time regulated, but not regulated by an authority. That there's an internal regulation that we doing that. A child should not say something about some subject on this platform, that platform. But otherwise, child is also a citizen of the country, and therefore, if you're a citizen of this country, this right is equally applicable to you, and there is no difference as such.
Okay, thank you very much, Rahul. It's been an awesome conversation with you, and I'm sure our viewers would have learned a lot about freedom of expression and freedom of speech in India.
Thank you. It was an opportunity for me to speak about this subject, and frankly speaking, this is a very vast topic. It's very difficult for your speaker to decide or discuss about this most valuable right guaranteed under the Constitution in just short span of time. I hope I could justify.
Awesome.
Definitely, it is a wonderful conversation. I think probably we can.
Yes.
Thank
So,
you. Thank you, sir. Thank you for having me over here. Thank you.
thank you. Thank you so much. I urge all our viewers, who may have any clarifications or inquiries to contact Mr. Rahul Shyam Bhandari on rahulbhandari09@gmail.com. So as I've mentioned, he is an advocate on record at the Supreme Court of India and is practicing from New Delhi.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Rahul, for excellent conversation. And
My pleasure, sir.
on behalf of Prime Point Foundation and E-Magazine Presence and Digital Journalists Association, we thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye.